On this Saturday night, hunting for grizzly bears. Residents in a BC community are warned to stay indoors after a school field trip was attacked. An update on the search and the victims. A bad deal.
It would be the end of Ukraine as we know it.
World leaders scramble to save Ukraine from the U.S. president's peace plan. Fossil fuel fight. The Global Climate Change Summit wraps up in Brazil. What's missing from the final agreement? Plus, gambling and advertising.
I don't think it should be advertised.
The battle to ban sports betting ads in Canada.
Global National. Reporting tonight, Jeff Semple.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. The hunt is on in northern BC for a bear that attacked a group of school children and teachers on Thursday during a field trip in the remote community of Bella Coola. A teacher and 3 students were sent to hospital. At least 2 of those victims remain in critical condition. We're learning new details tonight about the teachers' courageous efforts to fight off the bear. Paul Johnson is in Bella Coola with the very latest on the search. Paul.
Jeff, we're nearing the end of the second full day of searching for that bear, and so far from what we can understand, that bear is still on the loose. The search is being led by the BC Conservation Officer Service, and they got some reinforcements today. Their presence was highly visible from the side of the main highway that cuts through the Bella Coola Valley here, in some cases with their rifles at the ready. Search is being done on foot and with ATVs. They're using drones and trail cameras to try to spot the bear, and their hope is that they can catch it in one of their large traps. Now, there's this ongoing question of how many bears were actually involved in the incident. Well, we think it was just the one bear that actually attacked. A couple of other bears were spotted. This is apparently coming from witnesses. Meantime, members of the Newhawk First Nation continue to come to terms with this tragedy. It was students and teachers from their band school who were attacked Thursday while they were on a field trip. We caught up with Hereditary Chief Noel Poudlas, who's related to many of the victims. He says the scene at the hospital was like something out of a war zone, and the stories that he's heard but the actions taken by the adults to protect the children are staggering.
My cousin had his scalp ripped. He ran towards the bear and jumped on it with his bare hands. And he started punching and kicking it. And the other teacher had bear spray this far from the bear. 2 cans right in the bear's eyes. Never even faced it. And that other lady, a teacher with crutches, was whacking it, and they were hitting it in the eyes and the face and the head for minutes, and then the bear finally took off.
Poudlas says the Newhawk people have been coexisting with grizzly bears in this valley for a very long time. So this is really an exceptional tragedy for this small community. He says they hope to heal in the coming days and weeks with some of their traditional ways, but they're also likely going to be asking for mental health and resource help from outside of the community as well. Jeff?
Paul Johnson in Bella Coola, BC. Thank you, Paul. The U.S. president is skipping this weekend's G20 summit in South Africa, but Donald Trump is still dominating the discussion there after world leaders learned of Trump's peace plan for Ukraine. The White House has now given Kyiv until Thursday to accept the 28-point plan, which has been widely criticized for favoring Moscow. Ukrainian officials are preparing for direct talks with Washington next week. Kyiv's allies at the G20 say the plan will require additional work. David Akin is at that summit where the agenda has just been upended. David.
Well, Jeff, the South African hosts wanted the very first G20 summit that's being held on the African continent to focus on the global south, climate change, and trade. But for many G20 members here, Canada included, Donald Trump's ultimatum forced them to shift their focus, at least for a few hours, to the war in Ukraine.
Prime Minister Mark Carney arrived at the G20 summit Saturday morning, but within a few hours, he and several other European leaders broke away for an impromptu meeting to address Trump's insistence that by Thursday, Ukraine agree, among other things, to give up land and renounce aspirations of joining NATO.
If any Ukrainian leader were to sign up for even a part of this so-called plan, it would be the end of Ukraine as we know it. Game over.
Ukraine's allies have the same view, hence their quick decision to huddle up.
As I sometimes say, Ukraine should be at the table, not on the table.
The group of leaders, including Canada's Mark Carney, issued a joint statement that did not reject Trump's peace plan, but said instead that it, quote, requires additional work, end quote. Leaders were especially concerned that Trump's plan would put limits on Ukraine's armed forces.
Ukraine must be making decisions for its own future in terms of its own territorial integrity, in terms of its boundaries, in terms of its people.
All matters about Ukraine must be determined in the end by Ukraine, and that's why we're talking very regularly with the Ukrainians.
And there may be an expectation, given Carney's relatively good relationship with Trump, that Canada could play a key role in any attempts to modify the U.S. position in the days ahead.
I think there's a real opportunity here for Canada and Ukraine to huddle in terms of how to deal with a very unpredictable, tantrum-prone Mr. Trump.
Trump, for his part, said his ultimatum is not necessarily final.
No.
But he does want the war to end.
We're trying to get it ended. One way or the other, we have to get it ended.
The bottom line for Canada, there must be a just and lasting peace in Ukraine, and it's Ukrainians, not Americans and not Russians, who get to decide what that looks like. Jeff.
David Akin in Johannesburg. Thanks, David. Ukraine's president and first lady marked Holodomor Remembrance Day in Kyiv at the memorial for the millions who died in the Soviets' man-made famine back in the 1930s. In his address, Zelensky said that he has approved a delegation to carry out talks to end the war in Russia, but he also warned that Kyiv risks losing its dignity and freedom if it accepts Russia's demands. The fragile ceasefire in Gaza is again under strain tonight. Health officials say at least 20 Palestinians were killed across the enclave after another round of Israeli airstrikes. The attacks followed days of escalating violence, including Israeli strikes that killed 33 people this week. The Israeli military says it launched today's strikes after an armed man crossed into an Israeli-held area of Gaza and opened fire on its troops. Hamas blames Israel for repeatedly violating the ceasefire. Well, Washington is reeling today from the news that Marjorie Taylor Greene is resigning. The conservative congresswoman was a prominent ally of Trump and his MAGA movement until a recent public feud over the president's handling of the Epstein files. Trump had been threatening to have Greene voted out of office. As Reggie Cicchini explains, cracks are beginning to show in the Republican Party.
It's all so absurd and completely unserious.
A political thunderclap has shaken Washington with the abrupt resignation of one of the Republican Party's loudest voices, Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Loyalty should be a two-way street, and we should be able to vote our conscience.
The decision may have been a shock in her party, but not with her president. Marjorie went bad, he exclaimed on his social media account.
I don't know what happened. She's lost her way.
In recent months, Greene's position within the MAGA movement shifted as she broke with Donald Trump over the Epstein files.
He called me a traitor.
That rhetoric, according to Greene, resulted in threats, putting more distance between the two conservative powerhouses.
Trump's disassociation of her, I think that's the straw that broke the camel's back.
At one point, Marjorie Taylor Greene was seen as an heir apparent to the MAGA movement.
Under my opinion, there was a tremendous amount of fraudulent things that happened in the election.
She stood by Trump as he became a pariah in a post-January 6th world and acted as a foil to President Joe Biden. But as this Trump administration leaned into foreign policy, Greene fought back.
America first should mean America first and only Americans first.
And faced a pending political nightmare.
She would never have survived a primary.
Her break with Trump is significant, and if more follow that path, it could put MAGA's survival chances post-Trump in question.
There's going to be other types of arguments as to whether or not the policies and the people who are trying to reclaim that torch are MAGA enough, and I see it as actually fracturing and going away. Not right away, but eventually.
Republicans will likely lose the midterms, and in turn, be expected to defend the president against impeachment.
Marjorie Taylor Greene's parting words to her party almost seem like a call to action, pleading to turn away from policies that could be electorally toxic. Reggie Cicchini, Global News, Washington.
Former Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro has been arrested over suspicions that he was planning to violate his house arrest and flee the country. A Brazilian Supreme Court justice calls the arrest a preventative measure after new evidence suggesting Bolsonaro has tried to break his ankle monitor. Bolsonaro was found guilty in September of plotting a military coup. He was placed under house arrest as he appeals his 27-year prison sentence. The United Nations climate talks in Brazil have reached a deal to deliver more money to countries hit hardest by climate change. But countries failed to agree on a roadmap to phase out fossil fuels. As Vincent McAviney reports, world leaders appear deeply divided.
Stifling temperatures, an attempted break-in, and even a terrifying fire. The two-week COP30 climate change summit in Belém, Brazil, has certainly been dramatic. And that's before the highly vexed negotiations. Saturday morning, with talks running overtime, delegates began leaving. With the summit on the verge of collapse and top emitter America having failed to turn up, some were questioning the future of the whole UN COP process. Then a breakthrough. All-night talks broke the deadlock between a group of 80 countries led by the EU and the UK, who insisted that the words fossil fuel appeared in the text, and an opposing group of petrostates led by Saudi Arabia. Ultimately, a compromise has been reached, boosting financing for poor nations to cope with climate change, but failing to include a transition plan away from fossil fuels, which are causing it. Despite the applause in the room, there was some admission of failure from the leadership.
We know some of you had greater ambitions for some of the issues at hand. I know the youth civil society will demand us to do more to fight climate change.
Promises have been made for roadmaps on transitioning from fossil fuels and halting and reversing deforestation, a key focus with the conference being held in the Amazon. But a decade on from the COP21 Paris Agreement, in which almost every country in the world committed to reducing greenhouse emissions, critics say roadmaps are no longer enough.
Lots and lots of countries getting up to say that they are deeply dissatisfied with it. Indeed, some of them saying it's illegitimate, that the global goal on adaptation is incoherent, that the mitigation work plan didn't have any kind of mention of fossil fuels. So there's a lot of, I would say, disappointment, even anger.
The world has edged a small step closer to the end of the fossil fuel era. But nations who not long ago were united in the fight against climate change now appear deeply divided. Vincent McAviney, Global News, London.
As world leaders discuss the response to climate change, parts of Southeast Asia are dealing with extreme weather. Nearly 60 centimeters of rain has fallen in 3 days in southern Thailand. More than 100 communities there are under evacuation orders. And in central Vietnam, more than 190 centimeters of rain have fallen this week. Flooding and landslides there have left at least 55 people dead and several others missing. Gunmen in Nigeria have abducted 303 students and 12 teachers from their Catholic school. The abduction has forced the closure of more than 40 schools across northern Nigeria, part of a wider government response. Local police say security forces are combing nearby forests in a massive search effort. It follows another kidnapping of 25 students at a Muslim girls' school earlier this week. No group has claimed responsibility for the abductions. Accomplice arrested. Coming up, the RCMP tracks down another Canadian accused of working for Ryan Wedding's alleged drug empire. Police have arrested another alleged accomplice of Canadian fugitive and suspected drug kingpin Ryan Wedding. The FBI says 32-year-old Rashid Hossein was arrested by the RCMP in Vancouver on Friday. He faces charges in the U.S. related to drug trafficking and money laundering linked to a drug empire that's allegedly run by Wedding. The former Olympian, who's also accused of murder, remains at large as the FBI ramped up its investigation into the criminal enterprise this week. Around 10 suspects connected to Wedding have now been arrested. A Métis veteran in Winnipeg is speaking out about his experience on Remembrance Day. He was kicked out of a local veterans club despite receiving several honors and medals for his service. Melissa Ridgen reports on the dispute and allegations of stolen valor.
Michael Bellhumer did what most military service folks do on Remembrance Day, suited up to honor the service and sacrifices made by the Canadian Armed Forces. He came here to the Army, Navy, Air Force Veterans Association.
No sooner did I walk in, approximately 10 minutes, a bunch of burly veterans surrounded me with black vests.
Bellhumer and his friends were told to leave.
I said, why? And they said, because you're posing a threat.
The service organization confirms Bellhumer was thrown out on Remembrance Day. They declined an interview, but told us the alleged threat is that veterans and their families would be upset by Bellhumer's presence, as his military service and the medals and insignia he wears have been questioned. Bellhumer says it began 2 years ago.
I attended a court matter in which I was a witness, and I wore my uniform jacket, and sheriff's officers accused me of being a fake veteran.
Sheriffs at the Manitoba legislature accused him of the same. It happened again when former Winnipeg MP Marty Morantz presented him a King Charles Coronation Medal. Stolen Valor Canada tells Global News they've got a long history of complaints about Bellhumer bedazzling his uniform with homemade medals. But in an email told Global News they will be closing a file on this individual, as he's been confirmed as serving in the Royal Canadian Air Force military police in the late 1960s.
You can't publicly humiliate somebody claiming that they're a fake veteran or wearing fake medals. Okay. These have to be presented officially, and I have every document to prove everything I'm wearing.
The medals Bellhumer is wearing here, Stolen Valor Canada confirms he's entitled to wear.
My experience has been totally degrading, humiliating, and I don't know if I'll go back now unless I receive an apology.
Something the Army, Navy, and Air Force Veterans Club says he won't be getting. Melissa Ridgen, Global News, Winnipeg.
All bets are off. Still ahead, the proposed legislation to ban sports gambling ads in Canada. Betting on sporting events has fast become a multi-billion-dollar industry here in Canada, but it's also sparked concerns about a rise in gambling addictions. This week, dozens of senators signed a petition urging the Prime Minister to ban all sports gambling ads in Canada, likening them to cigarette commercials. And Gaviola reports on the high-stakes battle.
Viewers watching the Toronto Blue Jays World Series playoff run were bombarded with sports betting ads.
Every other ad, it seemed, was an ad for sports betting.
With every tap, a new legend is born.
It's a multi-billion-dollar industry in Canada, projected to grow nearly 10% this year. The prevalence of ads, a sign of that popularity. Senator Down is spearheading a push to rein in sports gambling ads. More than 40 senators have signed the petition, urging Mark Carney to put people's well-being ahead of corporate profit.
We fully understand that we can't legislate away human weaknesses, but we also understand we can prevent others from taking advantage of people.
The floodgates opened with the legalization of sports betting in Canada in 2021. The Canadian sports betting market generated nearly $5.7 billion in revenue in 2024. It's projected to top $16 billion by 2030. Experts say young people, men in particular, are susceptible.
If you're 28 years old and you've still got student loans and you're not making a lot of money at your job yet and you've got other debts and you want to dig your way out, gambling appears to be a way to do that.
Insolvency trustees say it's increasingly an issue affecting up to 10% of clients. A slippery slope between recreational gambling and addiction.
If you are borrowing money to cover your living expenses because you're not able to cover your living expenses because you gambled, then I think you've got a problem.
With sports gambling becoming more popular, the problem isn't only impacting those watching the games. However, fans say they wouldn't miss those ads, though the teams would miss that ad revenue.
I don't think it should be advertised. I think it should be on us to, if we want to go gamble, rather than going online and spending our money.
Legislation to ban sports gambling ads is set to be introduced in the Senate, with a goal of pushing it through the House of Commons. But the federal government could take matters into its own hands.
Rather than waiting for Parliament to decide if they're going to pass the bill or not, the government can do what they did with cigarette ads and simply ban them outright.
Anne Gaviola, Global News, Toronto.
Sidelined by cancer. Coming up, the Vanier Cup kicks off in Regina without a star quarterback. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas in Montreal. Thousands gathered in the city's downtown for the 73rd Santa Claus Parade. It was first held back in 1925, making it the oldest parade of its kind in Quebec. Several other cities, including Toronto and Edmonton, are also hosting their parades this weekend. A reminder to the rest of us to get on with our Christmas shopping. Well, in a repeat of the CFL final, it was Saskatchewan versus Montreal today in the battle for Canadian college football supremacy. The Vanier Cup was held in Regina, but the Saskatchewan Huskies were without their star quarterback. Akin Amindroud is undergoing treatment for cancer. The 23-year-old was diagnosed with lymphoma earlier this month, following a lengthy absence from the team. Ahead of today's big game, his teammates paid tribute.
That's all of our brother. I mean, when that news came out, it was definitely really hard. But it gave us extra motivation, to play for him.
You never want to see a guy go down like that, but I mean that's the circumstance that we have to play in. So we're just going to keep playing, and we're going to play for him.
The Huskies and their backup quarterback fought valiantly, but in the end lost to Montreal 30-16. And that is Global National for this Saturday night. I'm Jeff Semple. Your Canada is going global this week. We're showing you pictures of Canadian pride we've received from all over the world. Tonight we're showcasing Amsterdam, Geneva, Illinois, and Rio Hato, Panama. Thanks for watching.